Happy Halloween. From the KUOW newsroom, this is Seattle Now. I'm Patricia Murphy with a roundup of today's top stories. It's Friday, October 31st. Two federal judges ordered the Trump administration today to continue funding the federal food benefit program known as SNAP. The administration is expected to appeal. Meanwhile, before today's ruling, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell declared a civil emergency to help people who were at risk of losing their food assistance benefits. The proclamation will allow the city to provide as much as $4 million a month to food banks if SNAP benefits are cut off. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy is sharing his perspective into the company's latest round of layoffs, which affected 14,000 corporate positions. During a corporate earnings call yesterday, Jassy told investors this week's cuts weren't driven by finances or artificial intelligence, but culture.
If you grow as fast as we did for several years, the size of businesses, the number of people, the number of locations, the types of businesses you're in, you end up with a lot more people than what you had before, and you end up with a lot more layers.
Jassy says that's weakened and slowed down Amazon's leadership ability to make quick decisions and maintain the company's culture of operating like the world's largest startup. More than 2,300 of the Amazon layoffs are based here in Washington state. A series of immigration arrests has shaken an Issaquah preschool community, and as Gustavo Sagrero reports, they've had a ripple effect throughout the city.
When Fatima Escareno, a U.S. citizen and owner of the Learning Nest in Issaquah, was pulled over by a white SUV on the highway Tuesday morning, the man who stepped out didn't identify himself. He then asked for her documents.
I don't know if it was police, state patrol, ICE, who was that? Because no introduction at all. It was me, the one that said, did I do something wrong?
She says he didn't believe her ID was valid and was let go only when she showed her U.S. passport. Escareno runs a preschool in Issaquah, where a mom was detained by immigration enforcement after dropping off her child last week. It's part of a series of actions by federal immigration enforcement that have happened in the Seattle suburb, alarming the community over the past week. Schools in Issaquah have also reported an uptick of absences as well. That's partly because families are concerned about sending their kids to class after recent immigration enforcement. Gustavo Sagrero, KUOW News.
The trial testing the legality of President Trump's efforts to deploy the National Guard to Portland entered its third and final day today. As Oregon Public Broadcasting's Conrad Wilson reports, the witnesses so far have been law enforcement officers.
Attorneys for the city of Portland and the states of Oregon and California continue to press their case that a National Guard deployment is both unnecessary and unlawful. They've spent much of the trial taking aim at the way federal law enforcement has used force against protesters outside the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement building in Portland. Federal law enforcement, on multiple occasions, has launched tear gas and pepper balls, among other things, at protesters without clear signs of provocation. A federal official disclosed while testifying that their tactics have led to 3 current internal investigations for improperly using force during the past 2 months. Attorneys for the U.S. Department of Justice say the National Guard is necessary. They've called federal officers who have testified about cases where they were outnumbered or say they were abandoned by local police. I'm Conrad Wilson in Portland.
The Washington State Supreme Court is upholding a $185 million payout to 3 teachers who say they were harmed by toxic exposures at a school in Monroe. The Seattle Times reports the ruling clears the way for several other lawsuits to move forward. Hundreds of teachers and students sued the company, Monsanto, over exposure to toxic PCBs leaking from fluorescent light fixtures at Sky Valley Education Center. Many say they had health problems, including cancer and brain damage caused by the chemicals. Monsanto settled most of those cases for an undisclosed amount. The 3 teachers' lawsuit is one of 9 that are still active. An appeals court had earlier thrown out the $185 million jury verdict, but the state Supreme Court upheld the payment yesterday on a 6-3 vote. A years-long project to change logging and environmental policies for federal forests in the Pacific Northwest is getting a restart. Here's Oregon Public Broadcasting's April Ehrlich.
The U.S. Forest Service is going back to the drawing board on updating the Northwest Forest Plan, a set of policies that regulate logging in 25 million acres of federal forests in Oregon, Washington, and California. The plan came out of the timber wars of the 80s and 90s and hasn't been amended in 30 years. The Biden administration proposed a Northwest Forest Plan amendment a few years ago, and the Forest Service has been working on it since. The agency released a draft proposal last winter. Now the Forest Service under the Trump administration wants to create a new draft proposal. Environmental groups worry that could increase logging in old forests and harm vulnerable species like the spotted owl. Timber groups have been calling on President Donald Trump to overhaul the entire Northwest Forest Plan since he took office. The Forest Service says it will publish a new proposal next fall. I'm April Ehrlich reporting.
An iconic Seattle music club is downsizing. The Crocodile is closing 2 venues and laying off nearly half its staff. The Crocodile expects to shut down its little sibling clubs, Madame Lou's and Hereafter, in December. The Seattle Times reports the Crocodile's main room will not be affected, nor will the attached hotel and bar. The belt-tightening, though, will cost about 100 jobs. Club owners say business has not fully recovered from the pandemic, and they point to rising operating costs and decreased alcohol sales. The Crocodile became a mainstay of the city's grunge scene in the early 90s. It moved into its current space in the Belltown neighborhood in 2021. And now it's time for a spooky story about the ghost students appearing at community colleges across Washington state. That's the term for fraudsters who enroll under assumed names to steal financial aid, then vanish. As Ann Dornfeld reports, the haunting is fueled by AI.
I want to exploit that clay at the bottom, pulling it up nice and steady.
Last spring, the art instructors at Green River College in Auburn were excited. Their upcoming summer classes were way more popular than usual. Some were already at capacity.
Summer quarter is typically lower enrolled, right? And so we're like, hey, wait a minute, this is really cool.
Paul Mativier chairs the art department. He says their enthusiasm soon turned to fright when they learned that fraudsters were flooding the college with fictional students. The registrar's office started deleting them as fast as they could.
But what would happen is that when they would remove them, they would backfill right in.
That meant classes looked full, so real students couldn't enroll. That cost colleges, many of which are already financially strapped these days. Green River scared off most of its phantom students last quarter, but not all. In Mativier's art appreciation class,
I noticed immediately there were like 4 or 5 students that completed the exam in 1 minute, which has never happened before. And usually it takes 45 minutes to over an hour.
Those students had all logged in at the same time, and they got the same questions wrong.
And I began to realize as I was reporting these students to the registrar that likely it was one entity taking these classes.
Even worse, undetected ghost students have been spiriting away federal loans and grants. At South Puget Sound Community College, enrollment director Roosevelt Mendez says they've confirmed about 36 phantom students they didn't identify in time.
A financial aid that amounts up is over $100,000 that's walked out our door.
Mendez is sure there are more losses they don't know about. The State Board of Community and Technical Colleges says schools are required to report known financial aid fraud, but that they don't have good numbers on how often it's happening because schools don't always detect it. Mendez is part of their state work group focused on ghost busting. He says the problem began after the COVID pandemic when many schools started letting students apply entirely online, dropping requirements like meeting with a counselor. Many schools have gotten rid of admissions fees and some prerequisites.
We don't really have a lot of barriers for students to apply here. I mean, that's the purpose of community college.
But lower barriers also made it easy for crooks to use stolen Social Security numbers to sign up for classes and financial aid without ever showing their face on campus. That can leave victims of identity theft on the hook to pay back the loans. Now colleges are looking at whether to bring some barriers back, like application fees or requiring video meetings to check IDs. In the meantime, some schools, like Green River, are hiring staff entirely focused on detecting fraud, like verifying that student addresses are not just vacant buildings, and looking for trends like classes at the beginning of the alphabet filling up the fastest. Mendez says at South Puget Sound, everyone in enrollment is now trained in fraud detection.
I didn't think that being the director of enrollment and registrar at a college would bring me to being a private investigator, but that's kind of what I've become a little bit in this process.
Instructors are also told to look for students who never show up to class or engage online and to drop them. Now Mendez says some fraudsters are getting wise.
Because they realize, hey, I've got to complete some coursework for them to give me the money. So they're using AI to complete this coursework at a rapid pace.
Mendez says community colleges need help, and quickly. He says they're seeing fraudsters use AI to submit 30 applications to different schools within minutes. But detecting and deleting ghost students is still a manual process.
As the fraudsters get smarter, we're getting left behind because they're using technology to help their efforts, and that's something that we also need to do to help our efforts in combating this.
He says colleges are going to need AI solutions to this AI-driven problem. Ann Dornfeld, KUOW News.
Next week on Seattle Now, we'll go to University of Washington's annual Constitution reading and learn about why it's an important ritual.
We should take 75 minutes a year to hear these words. It's moving to hear the different texture of people's voices.
Hear that Monday morning. That's all for today from the KUOW Newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst, and I'm Patricia Murphy. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. Have a great weekend. Happy Halloween.